Carrie Underwood had never been one to shy away from a bit of spirited dialogue. She had faced plenty of charged situations in her career: hostile interviews, sarcastic critics, and the occasional social media storm, but nothing quite prepared her for the whirlwind awaiting her on a Tuesday evening at a popular talk show infamous for its heated debates and unreservedly liberal host. The anticipation around her appearance was immense. Tickets for the live taping sold out in under 7 minutes, and fans huddled outside the studio as early as 7 a.m., bracing the crisp morning air, determined to catch a glimpse of the country music superstar. No one suspected they would soon witness a legendary showdown that would leave even the cameras speechless. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. The stage lights were bright, and the set was meticulously designed with plush chairs on a small raised platform. Each seat faced a massive desk where the host would typically preside over the conversation like a head teacher at a school assembly. The iconic walls were tinted with bright hues, accompanied by flashy on-screen graphics that changed themes every 7 seconds. A sweeping overhead shot showed the audience's excited faces, each attendee buzzing with curiosity. They knew that whenever this host disagreed with a guest, it rarely ended in quiet or polite resolution. The synergy, or rather the tension, promised a spectacle. A hush fell over the crowd when Carrie entered wearing a stunning midnight blue dress that shimmered under the spotlights. Her signature blonde hair cascaded gently down her shoulders, reflecting a calm poise that was both warm and quietly confident. She offered a gracious smile and waved at her cheering fans. Beneath her outward composure, a flicker of curiosity danced in her eyes. She was well aware of the host's reputation. Tales of fiery clashes peppered with biting remarks were almost a trademark of this talk show. Yet Carrie was determined to keep her composure no matter how challenging the questions might become. She took her seat gracefully, folded her hands on her lap, and waited for the cameras to roll. The host strode out seconds later, greeting the audience with an enthusiastic grin and the slightest hint of mischief twinkling in his expression. He wore a stylishly conservative navy blazer, perhaps an ironic choice for someone infamous for liberal viewpoints, and he carried a stack of note cards in one hand. The moment he settled in behind the desk, a hush fell once again. For those in the audience, it felt like the calm before the storm, that stretching tension akin to a bowstring pulled taut just before the arrow is released. Carrie kept her serene composure. Somewhere deep within, she knew there might be a challenge around the corner that would require quick thinking, a sense of humor, and poise to navigate. Live filming began, and the first 5 minutes passed without incident. The host started with conventional questions about Carrie's latest album, her inspirations, and the creative process. She shared that she had found new methods of storytelling, weaving pieces of her Oklahoma roots and personal experiences into her songs. She chatted amiably about her upcoming tours and teased that she might add new songs to her setlist if fans kept tweeting her with suggestions. For a moment, it seemed that the conversation might remain comfortably unremarkable, a standard Star Meets host routine. Audience members nodded along, some tapping their feet with restless anticipation. They had come expecting fireworks, and a polite back and forth about music might not fully deliver the drama they suspected was imminent. Then, with a casual shuffle of his note cards, the host took a sharper turn. His voice lost its earlier warmth and assumed a pointed edge. "Let's talk about something a little more controversial," he began, his gaze locked on Carrie. The atmosphere in the studio shifted palpably, as though everyone were holding their breath. The host pressed on, addressing hot-button political topics that he believed might put Carrie in a tight spot. He seemed determined to draw her into a debate and see if she'd waver or maybe stumble into a statement that would go viral. The audience stirred, eyes widening with interest. Carrie had been in the public eye for years, so she recognized a loaded question the moment it was posed. The host described certain progressive policies and singled out comments that had been made about them in the press. He asked Carrie point blank where she stood, referencing older interviews and out-of-context quotes. The intention was transparent: corner her into a statement that could be sensationalized. Yet Carrie maintained her effortless composure. She responded patiently, explaining that while she had personal beliefs, she also respected the fact that people view the world through different lenses. She urged empathy and compassion in discourse, adding a note about her Christian faith, inspiring her to love and listen first. That answer was poised and diplomatic, but it wasn't what the host wanted. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He demanded a yes or no response, pressing her once more to side categorically with or against a specific topic. The crowd shifted uneasily, uncertain how Carrie would handle the intensifying push. Perhaps they imagined a meltdown or a defensive posture. Yet she sat tall, an unwavering sense of self lighting up her presence. She acknowledged that the issues in question were complex and couldn't be whittled down to a single word answer. She empathized with people on both sides, knowing that real lives were impacted by legislation. She stressed that being forced into an absolute statement rarely promotes understanding. The host smirked. It was a challenge, and he decided to up the ante. He threw out references to celebrities who had publicly embraced certain liberal stances, expecting Carrie to react. We've heard from big stars who say one thing, then we have someone like you, who seems to straddle the fence. At some point, don't you feel you owe it to your fans to pick a side? He folded his arms, sure that the directness of his question would stir the pot. The camera zoomed in on Carrie's face. The audience grew quiet once more. The production staff from behind their monitors tensed as well. She listened intently, her expression calm, her eyes bright with an almost humorous defiance. When she finally spoke, her voice was clear as a bell, measured, and decidedly unruffled. I didn't realize that understanding the complexities of issues was the same as straddling the fence, she replied gently, a graceful smile on her lips. We live in a country founded on open dialogue, right? She gestured around at the cameras and the stage. That's the beautiful thing about this platform. People from different walks of life get to discuss, to share their perspectives, and hopefully learn from each other. It's not always about picking a side as quickly as possible. The crowd reacted with a ripple of applause, interspersed with murmurs. Even those in the audience who identified with the host's viewpoints acknowledged that Carrie was handling the confrontation with impressive elegance. The host, however, refused to back down. He declared that not everyone was so conveniently neutral, insinuating that perhaps she was too sheltered in her success to care about real struggles. He used the word privileged more than once, his tone sharp, all the while referencing the show's stance as a champion of progressive causes. Carrie quirked an eyebrow. Her voice carried a subtle edge of humor when she replied, I'm sure it's easy to call me privileged from behind a desk too. Doesn't mean I'm not grateful for the blessings in my life or that I haven't walked through my own valleys. She shrugged, taking a moment to let the statement rest. There was a small wave of appreciative laughter and applause from the crowd, who sensed the subtle challenge in her words. The host's mouth twitched. He'd wanted to trap her in a corner, but each time she offered a thoughtful response that disarmed him. Deciding perhaps he'd had enough of subtlety, he reached for a more frontal attack. He brought up religion, referencing Carrie's well-known Christian beliefs. To him, it was prime territory to poke at. He asked if she considered her faith more important than inclusive progress. He questioned how she could reconcile certain traditional religious stances with the need to support marginalized communities. It was the kind of question aimed at painting her as narrow-minded if she defended her faith, or insincere if she tried to downplay it. The tension in the studio grew thick. The audience collectively braced, waiting to see how she would respond. Carrie inhaled slowly, forming her reply thoughtfully. She started by acknowledging that religion, particularly Christianity, has been interpreted in many ways over centuries. She pointed out that faith is deeply personal, shaped by culture, upbringing, and personal convictions. Then, with a soft yet unwavering tone, she expressed that her understanding of Christianity at its core is about love, compassion, and service to others. She explained how she believed faith should be less about dividing lines and more about bridging gaps, about reaching out to those who need support. As she spoke, many in the audience nodded, appreciating her sincerity. She placed her hand on her heart and confided that while she might not have all the answers, she hoped to live by the ideals that helped her become a kinder person. The host, stymied by her balanced approach, tried to pivot. He mentioned a rumor about her allegedly refusing to perform on certain television specials because the networks had insisted she make a statement on a controversial subject. Without missing a beat, Carrie chuckled softly. She remarked that the rumor mill in the entertainment industry is extensive and creative, capable of spinning entire sagas from a single snippet of misinformation. The real reason she'd turned down some performances, she revealed, was often due to schedule conflicts or creative differences about the show format, not an unwillingness to voice her stance on issues. By then, the audience was thoroughly involved in the back and forth, leaning forward as though watching a tennis match between two equally matched players. But the host wasn't ready to relent. His eyes gleamed with a last-ditch determination, as though he had a final ace up his sleeve. He brought up an incident from Carrie's past in which she had once shared a personal opinion on social media, only to delete it when critics piled on. He sneered a little, implying that maybe she couldn't handle the heat of standing by her convictions. Carrie's response was immediate, bold, and tinged with comedic timing that seemed to stun everyone in the room. She admitted that yes, early in her career, she had posted something, a personal viewpoint that was neither scandalous nor inherently divisive, only to be bombarded by negative reactions from strangers. She recognized that many had misread her comment and turned it into something far from her original intention. Then she leaned forward slightly, eyes twinkling. "But can we talk about double standards for a second?" she asked in a casual tone that bordered on playful. "We live in a time where half the world wants you to have an opinion on everything, and the other half berates you no matter what you say. I learned quickly that sometimes the best thing is to reflect on whether a conversation is productive or if it's just noise." The corners of her mouth curved upward. "And also, sometimes I like to talk about dogs or dessert recipes on social media. It's less divisive. People get really intense about brownies, though. Never underestimate the fervor over the best brownie recipe." The studio erupted in laughter. Audience members clapped. Some wiped tears of mirth from their eyes. Even the camera operators had to stifle grins. The host hadn't quite expected Carrie to use humor in such a disarming manner. Rather than delivering a self-righteous or defensive retort, she diffused the tension with wit. It was that blend of sincerity and comedic awareness that made her words strike home. The host blinked, momentarily at a loss for words. This was the moment that would be replayed on viral clips across social media for days to come. Once the laughter subsided, he attempted one final volley, suggesting that celebrities have a moral obligation to be political role models. "Don't you think you have a responsibility to guide your fans toward what's right?" he demanded, a hint of frustration lacing his voice. Carrie's response, delivered with a polite tilt of her head, was the knockout blow. She remarked that while she understood the importance of being informed and engaged, she also believed that she wasn't elected to office, nor did she hold any official position that granted her authority over public policy. She pointed out that any influence she had came from her art, her music, and her personal example, through living authentically and treating people with kindness. She went on to say that artists can certainly speak about issues that matter to them, and in many cases they should, but it must come from a genuine place. She noted that forcing an artist to offer specific views for the sake of satisfying a demand for alignment cheapens the message and turns it into performance activism, which in the end doesn't help those who truly need solidarity. Instead, she supported a culture where individuals from all backgrounds, famous or not, are encouraged to form their own beliefs based on compassion, empathy, and evidence. She ended with a lighthearted quip. "Besides, if people can listen to Jesus take the wheel and find hope, or if they can hear before he cheats and unleash some righteous fury at heartbreak, isn't that good enough for now?" The audience roared with approval. Some stood up in excitement, cheering on the woman who had just skillfully sidestepped a barrage of questions designed to paint her in a corner. Cameras caught every moment. Social media accounts belonging to fans who were present lit up with posts about how Carrie Underwood had navigated the discussion with intelligence, humor, and empathy, deftly brushing off attempts to box her into an extreme viewpoint. The host, flustered but still trying to maintain composure, mustered an uneasy grin. He turned toward the camera and attempted to steer the show to the next segment, but it was obvious who had won this exchange. Backstage, a number of producers walked up to Carrie with wide-eyed admiration. They complimented her ability to maintain grace under fire, sharing that not many guests had managed to keep the upper hand in a conversation with that host. Carrie, with the humility she was well known for, merely offered a warm thanks. She explained that she found it essential to remain respectful, even if the other person wasn't always extending the same courtesy. She sighed in relief when she finally slipped away to her dressing room, a safe haven from the intense scrutiny of the cameras. In the days that followed, clips of Carrie's appearance circulated online, garnering tens of millions of views. Hashtags related to her interview trended on various social media platforms for 7 straight days. People from all walks of life chimed in. Conservatives hailed her for holding her own. Liberals who watched recognized the nuance and grace she displayed under relentless questioning. Many commented that for once it wasn't about who was right or wrong. It was about mutual respect, intelligent dialogue, and a sense of humor that diffused tension instead of escalating it. She was applauded for not losing her temper and for standing her ground without resorting to insults. Some media outlets published think pieces analyzing the moment. They praised Carrie's measured approach, her calm demeanor, and her refusal to be steamrolled. On the flip side, a few pundits criticized her for not taking a harder stance in favor of specific policies. Still, the overarching sentiment was admiration. In an age when interviews so often devolve into shouting matches, her example provided a rare glimpse of how a guest can navigate a seemingly hostile environment with grace and come out on top without ever stooping to the same level of combativeness. The host tried to recover from the bruising by claiming he'd given Carrie a chance to address topics that matter. Yet, ironically, most viewers felt that the way he had approached her was less about real discourse and more about cornering a high-profile celebrity. The ratings for that episode were indeed high, some of the highest in the show's 7-year run. But it left the host dealing with criticism over bullying tactics and sensationalism. Carrie, meanwhile, appeared to have soared even higher in public esteem. That Saturday, she performed at a music festival in front of thousands of jubilant fans. The crowd's cheers were deafening when she took the stage. Mid-set, someone in the audience shouted a playful reference to her talk show appearance, and Carrie laughed, waving a hand in acknowledgement. "I love you guys too," she said into the microphone, her voice echoing through the night air. "It's because of you that I can stand up for my beliefs and still sing my heart out without fear. Thank you for letting me be me." The crowd responded with resounding applause that rolled over the venue like thunder. Even those who had only vaguely known of Carrie's music discovered through the viral clips of her interview a new respect for her authenticity and earnest spirit. She'd shown that a celebrity can remain genuine, speak from the heart, and refuse to be shoved into polarizing corners for the sake of ratings. Not every star might have the inclination or skill to navigate such situations so gracefully, but she had somehow managed to unify an audience that typically would be split and bickering. For at least a fleeting moment in time, people were too busy applauding her grace to continue warring on social media about every last political nuance. Back at home, Carrie enjoyed a well-deserved day off with her family. The phone rang constantly. Texts from friends, messages from fellow artists, and calls from her management team poured in. Her social media notifications skyrocketed. Amid all that frenzy, she maintained a certain calm. She posted a short, lighthearted statement expressing gratitude to her fans for their support, encouraging everyone to have open conversations with empathy. Then, in typical Carrie style, she tossed in a quick mention of her excitement about a new pair of cowboy boots she'd picked up, just to remind everyone that real life still existed outside the whirlwind of televised drama. A few nights later, footage emerged from behind the scenes of that talk show, showing the host after the broadcast. He was caught on a studio mic complaining that Carrie had blindsided him with her composure. He seemed flabbergasted that she hadn't taken any bait. Some critics weighed in on the meltdown, remarking that it's hardly a guest's responsibility to cater to a host's plan for a divisive confrontation. Others pointed out the irony of a self-proclaimed progressive host being upset that a woman refused to fit the narrative he was constructing. Carrie herself declined to comment, though her knowing smile in subsequent interviews spoke volumes. Months passed, and the memory of that moment continued to surface whenever the intersection of celebrity culture and political discourse became a topic of conversation. Entertainment news outlets occasionally revisited the footage, labeling the exchange as one of the most unexpectedly comedic and meaningful interviews of the year. Carrie's measured humor and the host's obvious frustration became a teachable moment for anyone studying media and communication. The entire incident took on near mythical status in fan communities. Memes sprang up, short clips circulated, and comedic parodies were performed by impersonators on stage and social media alike. There was a particular moment that gained cult status online. The second Carrie made a quip about brownies being a safer topic than politics. Audiences loved how a simple reference to dessert recipes had turned what could have been a vicious debate into a shared laugh. Some declared it a masterclass in how to pivot during an aggressive interview. It also sparked a mini debate in the comment sections of various platforms about whether brownies were best with or without nuts, a conversation ironically reminiscent of the divisive political discourse the host had tried to drag Carrie into, but this time grounded in playful banter. Carrie's career flourished post-interview, with her fan base growing larger than ever. Event organizers noted that her concerts sold out faster, her album sales climbed, and her social media following soared to new heights. She'd always been popular, of course, but this incident elevated her from star singer to a symbol of classy composure under pressure. Some admirers even started calling her America's Songbird of Civility, a title that made her laugh and blush whenever it was mentioned. She joked in one interview that the phrase was so grand it belonged in a superhero film, though she promised if she were a superhero, her powers would revolve around hitting high notes and baking cookies that instantly improved people's moods. Though Carrie's life eventually settled back into a routine of studio sessions, family time, and touring, there was a newfound spirit in her performances. It was as if the entire experience, the confrontation, the viral aftermath, and the wave of support, had given her a fresh perspective on how the world of show business intersected with personal identity and public discourse. She seemed more willing than ever to let her guard down in interviews, offering heartfelt anecdotes about life on the road, motherhood, and the importance of kindness in a rapidly changing world. Curiously, the host's talk show continued, but with diminished ratings. Some speculated that viewers had grown weary of the brash tactics that used to reel them in. As the political climate shifted, many craved genuine conversation over constant confrontation. The show still had its loyal following, of course, but it never quite captured the lightning in a bottle it once did. Producers attempted to replicate the success of that viral Carrie Underwood episode by inviting other celebrities and stirring controversies, but the magic of that genuine clash of wit and will never re-emerged. Most recalled how brilliantly Carrie had handled herself, and any subsequent confrontation fell flat by comparison. Looking back on that event, close friends of Carrie laughed at how ironically it started on the 7th day of the month, with fans lining up at 7 a.m., and the host's show celebrating its 7th season. That number became a curious thematic thread for those who looked for signs or patterns in everyday life. Some fans joked that Carrie had been destined to shine that day, given how many times the number 7 wove itself into the scenario. They pointed out that even the applause breaks happened at strangely timed intervals, almost to the minute. Whether it was coincidence or fate, the synergy of all those sevens made for a memorable moment of stardom. One might wonder if Carrie ever felt regret for going on that show in the first place. She mentioned once in a lighthearted interview that she had no regrets at all, and had even learned a lot from the experience. She joked that she wished every tricky situation in her life came with an audience ready to cheer whenever she offered a well-timed joke. Reflecting on the intense pressure of being live on air and facing pointed questions, she admitted it was nerve-wracking, but it also reminded her of the early days of her career, singing in front of massive crowds, uncertain if she'd forget her lyrics or trip on stage. It was that same adrenaline that could either unravel a person or propel them to new heights. She chose the latter. Her fans loved her all the more for it, bonding over the shared memory of how she elegantly dissected the host's attempts to provoke her. Over time, they created inside jokes, referencing brownies, cowboy boots, or the phrase straddling the fence in her social media comments. Whenever Carrie saw those references, she'd respond with a playful emoji or a quick acknowledgement, letting them know she remembered. It formed a special connection, a unique piece of lore in Carrie Underwood's expansive career. The greatest takeaway from that moment, for many, was how humor and compassion could override tension. People saw firsthand that a calm, respectful approach can dismantle even the most aggressive line of questioning. Instead of matching hostility with hostility, Carrie had gently guided the conversation, injecting levity and sincerity. It didn't make the disagreement vanish, but it reoriented the dynamic, reminding everyone that behind every viewpoint is a human being, shaped by experiences, values, and beliefs. In a world rife with polarizing debates, that gentle lesson echoed for months, maybe years after the bright lights faded. Perhaps that's why the story endured. It symbolized not just a celebrity besting a combative host, but also the power of authenticity in a platform that too often rewards spectacle. It was a testament to the possibility of bridging differences, or at least managing them through discourse rather than insult. Even in the face of rising tension and orchestrated drama, Carrie stuck to her convictions and skillfully stood her ground without tearing anyone down. That's what people remembered above all else. That woman who managed to disarm a professional provocateur with a smile, a dash of wit, and an unwavering respect for others. Years later, fans still recount the day Carrie Underwood lit up that stage. They recall how she emerged glowing, addressing the audience with simple charm. They remember the host's expressions, the smirk, the widening eyes, the baffled frown, as he realized he was completely outmaneuvered. They relive the crowd's raucous laughter when Carrie joked about brownies and the thunderous applause that greeted each of her earnest, authentic responses. And at the end of it all, they celebrate the triumphant reminder that grace, patience, and a hearty sense of humor can conquer even the most unexpected challenges, sometimes in a way that leaves everyone speechless. In the twilight of that evening, after the studio lights dimmed and the audience filed out, Carrie Underwood took a moment to reflect. She stepped away from the cameras and the swirling energy of the crowd. There, in a quiet corridor, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. The echoes of applause still thrummed in the distance, and though she was exhausted, a gentle satisfaction settled over her like a comforting shawl. It wasn't simply the thrill of coming out on top during a combative interview. It was the sense of staying true to herself in a setting designed to test her authenticity. She had revealed a part of her perspective on politics, faith, and personal responsibility without compromising what she stood for, and she had managed to deflect the jabs with playful humor instead of bitterness. Even if some wanted her to speak more forcefully, or less forcefully, she had chosen her own pace, shaped by a grounded self-awareness that had taken her years to cultivate. That was perhaps the most profound victory of all, knowing that she wasn't performing an act or delivering scripted lines, but rather showing the world exactly who she was. Weeks later, as the frenzy finally died down and the world moved on to its next hot topic, Carrie wrote new songs in her living room, drawing from the swirl of emotions and lessons she'd gleaned. She penned lyrics about standing up for oneself with grace, about walking a fine line between two extremes, and about the courage found in authenticity. She hummed melodies that evoked the warmth of a heart at peace, tested chords that pulsed with the determined rhythm of perseverance. She felt the creative energy coursing through her, a direct response to that night's challenge. And each time she got stuck on a line or struggled to find the right word, she remembered that wave of laughter that had washed over the stage when she cracked that brownie joke. It lit a spark of confidence within her, reminding her that she had a voice worth hearing. A year passed, then 2, then 3. But fans and industry insiders alike still fondly recalled that iconic evening. Some said the host had since mellowed, adopting a slightly kinder tone in future interviews, perhaps a lasting ripple effect of his encounter with Carrie. Others insisted it was an isolated incident, but either way, the memory lingered. Carrie herself garnered new fans, people who had never listened to country music before but admired her steady resolve under those blazing lights. They bought her albums, attended her concerts, and discovered that the same genuineness she'd shown on camera was woven through every lyric and every note she sang. If anyone had asked her directly about that moment, about how she had found the strength to stand her ground and deliver that brilliantly witty retort, she would likely have smiled and given a modest shrug. Maybe she would say it was divine providence, or that years on the road performing had taught her how to handle unexpected twists. Or maybe she'd just grin and say that sometimes you just have to laugh at the craziness and hope others laugh with you. Whatever the explanation, it worked. It had become one of those rare television moments that transcended the usual boundaries of daytime talk shows and fleeting scandals, becoming something that truly resonated with viewers across multiple perspectives. At the center of it all was a woman of faith, a country music superstar who, on a stage set for controversy, had calmly carved out her space. She'd done so without arrogance or fear, turning what could have been a relentless grilling session into a showcase for civility. Her gentle sense of humor, unwavering humility, and earnest belief that people could talk about complex topics without demonizing each other offered a small beacon of hope in a media landscape often dominated by shouting matches. Even those who disagreed with her, or who wished she had declared unequivocal support for certain policies, couldn't deny the grace with which she presented herself. And so the story lived on. People recounted the remarkable event whenever they needed an example of kindness triumphing over aggression, or a reminder that sometimes laughter can dissolve even the most stubborn barriers. Those who were lucky enough to be in the audience that day still described it as one of the most electrifying experiences of their lives. They recalled how they had practically held their breath during the heated exchanges, only to exhale in laughter and relief when Carrie's wit punctured the tension. In retellings, some embellished details, some downplayed others, but the essence remained the same. Carrie Underwood hilariously crushed a liberal TV host on live television and in doing so, taught everyone a lesson in composure, empathy, and authentic communication. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Carrie Underwood's response? How do you think the host reacted? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.